was asleep. When I woken up, he was having sex with me. I tried to fight back.
One 24-year-old woman was left in a male holding cell for an hour. It only took minutes for things to go south. Another woman was locked in the same cell with 9 men. The guards didn't intervene, and she never slept the same again. You'd be shocked how many times a female inmate ends up in a male prison and how often it gets swept under the rug. And the consequences? Let's take a look at them. DC jail incident. In February 2021, a 24-year-old female inmate was mistakenly placed in a men's holding cell for approximately 1 hour, becoming exposed to a highly inappropriate and distressing situation. The events began on February 3, 2021, when the woman was arrested on a misdemeanor simple assault charge related to a domestic dispute that had occurred on January 26. The dispute reportedly involved a physical altercation with a man in a vehicle where she allegedly used a weapon, causing injuries. Following her arrest, she appeared before a judge via teleconference and was ordered to be released on personal recognizance with a stay-away order from the victim. What should have been a straightforward process of release instead became a nightmare scenario due to what the DC Department of Corrections, DOC, later described as an operational error by DOC staff and a violation of agency policy. Instead of being processed for release, the woman was mistakenly placed in the Central Cell Block, a holding area designated specifically for male inmates at the DC Jail's Central Detention Facility, CDF. During her approximately 1-hour detention in this male holding cell, the woman alleged that a male inmate performed a sex act in front of her. This exposure to sexual misconduct, though brief in duration compared to some other cases we're examining, nonetheless caused significant emotional distress to the victim. The doc promptly acknowledged the error after it came to light, issuing a public statement that recognized the severity of the mistake. This apology, while immediate, did little to mitigate the psychological impact of the incident on the victim. Her family expressed strong disapproval, with a family member stating, "This cannot happen to another woman." They indicated that they were considering legal action against the DOC and the DC jail, though no public records of a lawsuit specifically related to this incident were found in subsequent searches. The psychological impact on the victim was significant. Reports indicated that she was receiving treatment for PTSD following the incident, underscoring how even a relatively brief exposure to such a situation can have lasting consequences for mental health. Marian County Jail. In March 2014, a 28-year-old female inmate was erroneously placed in a male cell block, sharing space with 9 men. While no assault was reported in this specific instance, the circumstances highlight systemic problems that put inmates at risk. This incident occurred on a Tuesday morning between 8 a.m. and 8:30 a.m. The female inmate was mistakenly housed with 9 male inmates, and while the exact duration remains unclear, it was long enough to raise serious concerns about facility operations. Importantly, unlike some other cases we've examined, the female inmate did not report any allegations of assault or wrongdoing by the male inmates. The error was only discovered after the woman's attorney called the jail, prompting immediate action from authorities. What makes this case particularly troubling is that it was not an isolated incident, but rather the second such mix-up in less than a year at the same facility. In July 2013, a similar error occurred when a female inmate was locked in a cell with a male inmate, leading to a claim of sexual assault. In that earlier case, no charges were filed, and a test was inconclusive, with the woman refusing to cooperate with outside investigators. Following the 2013 incident, Sheriff John Layton had taken several measures intended to prevent future errors. These included reprimanding 3 deputies, ordering remedial training, and implementing new policies such as labeled and color-coded signage for cell blocks. Despite these preventive efforts, the 2014 incident demonstrated that these measures were inadequate to address the underlying issues. A key factor contributing to these errors was the facility's significant overcrowding and operational complexity. At the time of the 2014 incident, Marian County Jail was housing 936 inmates, with 264 being female. The facility comprised 71 cell blocks, with designations changing frequently, approximately 6 times per week and sometimes 2 to 3 times per day, based on operational needs. This constant flux in cell block functions likely contributed to confusion and errors in inmate placement. Indiana Jail Incident, Clark County Jail. In October 2021, what would later be described as a night of terror unfolded at the Clark County Jail in Jeffersonville, Indiana. This facility, notably featured on the A&E reality TV show 60 Days In, became the site of one of the most disturbing security breaches in recent correctional history. 28 female inmates experienced a nightmare scenario when male inmates gained unauthorized access to their housing unit. According to extensive reports and lawsuits, the attacks lasted approximately 2 hours, during which the women were subjected to sexual assaults, physical violence, threats, and intimidation. The male intruders took the disturbing step of concealing their identities by wearing towels and blankets as masks, adding to the terror experienced by the women. How did such a catastrophic security breach occur? The answer points to a shocking betrayal of trust and duty. David Lowe, a corrections officer at the facility, allegedly sold access to the female housing unit to male inmates for $1,000. This unconscionable act not only violated his professional obligations, but placed dozens of women in direct danger.
Women were harassed, sexually assaulted, threatened, and completely terrified. When I met with each and every one of these women, and they broke down repeatedly, you get an impression, an understanding of what these women went through.
What makes this incident particularly disturbing is the alleged failure of the jail staff to intervene despite the presence of surveillance cameras throughout the facility. The women reportedly made desperate attempts to alert authorities during the attack. As their attorney explained,
these females were doing everything they could to alert the jail staff. They were pounding on the door for help. They were hitting the buzzer on the inside of the pod in order to alert jail staff.
The aftermath of the attack compounded the women's trauma. Rather than receiving support and protection, the victims allegedly faced punitive measures from the jail administration, including lockdowns, confiscation of personal property, and being subjected to continuous lighting for 72 hours. Perhaps most disturbing of all, reports indicate that the locks to the female pods were not changed, even though the keys remained missing, presenting an ongoing security risk to the women. The legal response to this incident came in the form of 2 federal lawsuits filed in 2022. These suits named Clark County Sheriff Jamie Knoll, David Lowe, and several other current and former jail staff as defendants, alleging violations of the women's civil rights and failure to ensure their safety. The lawsuits detailed claims of rape, assault, and intimidation, with specific allegations that the attacks were enabled by Lowe's actions and that jail officials failed to respond adequately. By September 2023, a tentative settlement had been reached for 3 federal cases related to the incident. The legal proceedings continued to progress, and by April 2024, nearly 30 women had settled their claims. The final plaintiff, who alleged and subsequent pregnancy, reached an agreement in March 2024. David Lowe, the former guard implicated in the incident, faces separate criminal charges, including escape, official misconduct, and trafficking with an inmate. His trial was scheduled for November 2022, but as of the latest available information, no public updates on the outcome have been found, leaving uncertainty about the criminal proceedings. Rikers Island incident. The Rikers Island Correctional Complex in New York City, already notorious for its troubled history, became the center of another disturbing case in April 2022. This incident, which took place at the Rose M. Singer Women's Jail, highlights the complex intersection of transgender housing policies and inmate safety in correctional facilities. According to detailed lawsuit documents and reports, a female inmate identified in legal filings as Rose Doe was allegedly raped by a male inmate who had gained access to the female dorm by posing as a transgender woman. This troubling sequence of events unfolded over several days, beginning on April 4, 2022, when the perpetrator first made sexual advances toward Rose Doe. The situation escalated dramatically on April 6, when the perpetrator allegedly groped Rose Doe in the bathroom, an incident witnessed by other inmates. Just 1 day later, on April 7, the situation culminated in the most serious allegation. Rose Doe reported being raped while she was sleeping, with the perpetrator pulling down her pants during the assault. What makes this case particularly concerning are the repeated warnings Rose Doe gave to correctional staff prior to the assault. She submitted at least 2 written complaints on April 6, 2022, which were reportedly reviewed by Acting Warden Floyd Phipps. Despite these explicit warnings about the threat she faced, no action was taken to remove the perpetrator from the female dorm. The lawsuit, filed in November 2023 against New York City and 20 individuals, including correction officers Jennifer Cruz and Rashida King, makes disturbing allegations about institutional complicity in the incident. According to the legal filings, the Department of Corrections, DOC staff, allegedly instructed the male inmate to claim he was transgender to gain access to the female dorm, effectively facilitating the assault. This claim is supported by jail call transcripts in which the perpetrator allegedly admitted to another inmate that he was not transgender and was there to get PE. Further compounding these allegations, the perpetrator reportedly had a history of sexual misconduct, with jail disciplinary records showing filing 5 open complaints under the Prison Rape Elimination Act, PREA. He was also under investigation for involvement in a prostitution ring at Rikers, raising serious questions about why he was placed in a female facility despite these red flags. In the aftermath of the assault, Rose Doe alleges that the doc engaged in a cover-up by failing to provide adequate medical and mental health services and not properly collecting or documenting evidence. Rather than receiving support and protection, Rose Doe claims she was punished by the defendants, exacerbating her trauma. The impact on Rose Doe has been profound and lasting. In her own words, she will be scarred for life from the assault. She was discharged from the facility in August 2022, but the psychological effects of her experience continue to haunt her, as evidenced by her legal action and public statements. HMP Perth, Scotland. The incident occurred on October 21, 2024, when the woman appeared at Kirkcaldy Sheriff Court and was remanded in custody. Due to incomplete information about her gender and an assumption based on her masculine features, she was processed as a man and sent to HMP Perth, a facility designed exclusively for male inmates. The error was only discovered after prison staff conducted a more thorough search, revealing that she lacked vital parts you might expect a man to have, as one source delicately put it. Recognizing the mistake, authorities kept her in segregation overnight at HMP Perth to ensure her safety and transferred her to HMP Cornton Vale, Scotland's only women's prison, the following day. While the duration of her stay in the male prison was brief, just one night, the incident raised significant concerns about the risks to her safety and the potential for similar errors. Media reports consistently noted that the mistake was due to an assumption based on appearance rather than proper verification, highlighting a gap in procedural accuracy. Police Scotland, responsible for the initial custody process, acknowledged the error and stated they are investigating how the woman's gender was misidentified. A spokesperson for Police Scotland said, "We are reviewing our custody procedure to ensure this does not happen again. This review aims to address the systemic issues that led to the misidentification, particularly the reliance on incomplete information." The Scottish Prison Service, SPS, which manages Scotland's prisons, was involved in the incident as the woman was sent to HMP Perth under their jurisdiction. However, no specific public statement from the SPS regarding this incident was found, leaving some uncertainty about their role in response. This incident must be understood within the context of recent policy changes and controversies surrounding gender identity in Scottish prisons. In December 2023, following the Isla Bryson case, a transgender woman convicted of who was initially placed in a women's prison, the SPS updated its policy. The new guidelines state that all newly convicted or remanded transgender prisoners are initially placed in jails according to their birth sex, with further assessments determining their final placement. This policy shift was a response to public outcry and aimed to balance safety concerns with individual rights. However, the current incident involves a cisgender woman, not a transgender individual. Making it distinct from the transgender policy debate, it instead highlights the need for accurate gender recording and verification processes for all prisoners, regardless of identity. Campaign groups, such as For Women Scotland, have criticized the sloppy recording and reporting of sex, calling for sex to be explicitly recorded on all police and prison documents to prevent such errors. Illinois Case, Logan Correctional Center. Monroe, born Andre Patterson, is a transgender woman who became the center of a highly publicized controversy that highlights the challenges of balancing transgender rights with safety concerns in correctional facilities. Monroe's incarceration history is significant. She has been in prison since 2005, serving a lengthy sentence for multiple felonies, including second-degree murder, attempted murder, aggravated battery, and attempted aggravated arson. In 2006, while awaiting trial in Cook County Jail, Monroe was charged with murder after strangling her cellmate, Kamani Muhammad, to death during an argument. Her projected parole date is 2051, with a discharge date in 2054. While in male prison facilities, Monroe reported experiencing severe sexual harassment, assault, and abuse, leading to multiple suicide attempts, self-castration attempts, and a diagnosis of PTSD. In February 2019, represented by the Uptown People's Law Center, UPLC, and the MacArthur Justice Center, Monroe filed a federal lawsuit against the Illinois Department of Corrections, IDOC, seeking transfer to a women's prison to escape ongoing abuse in male facilities. On April 1, 2019, Monroe was transferred to Logan Correctional Center, a women's prison in Lincoln, Illinois, following the lawsuit. This transfer made her one of the first transgender inmates in Illinois to be moved to a facility aligning with her gender identity, following a similar transfer for another transgender inmate, Strawberry Hampton, in December 2018. However, the situation took a dramatic turn in June 2019, just 2 months after Monroe's transfer. A female inmate, referred to as Jane Doe Doe, in court documents, filed a federal lawsuit alleging that she was raped by Monroe on June 18, 2019, the day Monroe was moved into her housing unit. The lawsuit, filed in February 2020, named Logan's acting warden Beatrice Calhoun and correctional officers Todd Sexton and Brent Keeler as defendants, accusing them of covering up the assault and punishing Doe for reporting it. Jane Doe claimed that Monroe, who identifies as female but retains male genitalia, immediately expressed interest in her upon arriving in her housing unit. Doe described herself as smaller and physically weaker and said she was terrified of Monroe due to her size, strength, and prior criminal history. On the same day, Doe alleged that Monroe raped her, overpowering her easily. After the assault, Doe was moved to the prison's healthcare unit, where she was interviewed by internal affairs officers. The following day, senior correctional officer Todd Sexton allegedly told Doe he did not believe her and pressured her to retract her claim, stating the encounter was consensual. Doe said she was coerced into providing this statement and was later punished for filing a false complaint under the Prison Rape Elimination Act, PREA. The IDOC determined she had committed a major infraction, leading to months of punishment, including transfer to Decatur Correctional Center 40 miles away. Court documents and testimony from Dr. William Puga, IDOC's head of psychiatry, indicated that more than one Logan inmate reported sexual assaults by Monroe. Puga testified that Monroe was not welcomed at Logan, had threatened staff and inmates, and faced multiple PREA complaints, some deemed false but many legitimate. The IDOC investigated Doe's allegation and concluded that the encounter was consensual, not rape. Alan Mills, Monroe's attorney and head of UPLC, stated that the IDOC deemed Doe's claims unfounded, suggesting the lawsuit's underlying claim was without merit. Mills argued that Monroe faced similar accusations of sexual harassment since arriving at Logan, which he attributed to transphobia among inmates and staff. He noted that Monroe had made friends and found support at Logan, suggesting the allegations were part of a broader discomfort with her presence in a women's prison. Former Logan warden Glenn Austin described Monroe's time at the facility as turbulent, citing multiple disciplinary tickets, serious infractions, previous PREA allegations, and confirmed sexual misconduct. Austin expressed concern about Monroe's history and behavior, noting she had told officials she had no sexual interest in women, though Mills countered that consensual inmate relationships are common in prisons. On February 7, 2020, U.S. District Court Judge Michael Mayem issued an injunction barring IDOC from transferring Monroe to a male prison without 14 days' notice and a justification, citing her history of abuse in male facilities. This ruling came 3 days before Doe's lawsuit was filed, suggesting a tense legal and administrative environment surrounding Monroe's placement. Kansas City Jail, Jackson County Detention Center. On August 26, 2016, a catastrophic security failure at the Jackson County Detention Center in Kansas City led to one of the most disturbing incidents in our examination. This case demonstrates how a seemingly minor error, a guard leaving keys in a door lock, can escalate into a serious assault with lasting consequences for the victims and the institution. The sequence of events began on August 24, 2016, when a guard mistakenly left a set of keys in a door lock. This error allowed an unnamed inmate to obtain the keys, which were later used to unlock multiple cells, including that of Dante D. Jefferson, a 29-year-old inmate already held on murder charges. Surveillance footage captured Jefferson and other inmates roaming the hallways from 2:40 a.m. to 4:30 a.m. on August 26, during which Jefferson entered the cell of a female inmate and committed a sexual assault.
According to the lawsuit, a violent inmate had free reign of this jail thanks to that stolen key, and he used it to unlock her cell at 4 in the morning.
Her attorneys say in the dead of night, she woke up to the sound of a key turning the lock on her dark Jackson County jail cell. Soon, a man was groping her. She tried to fight back, but says inmate Dante Jefferson choked and punched her in the head, then proceeded to sexually assault her. She heard someone whistle from the hallway, and then Jefferson hid in her cell until he was clear to let himself out. According to court records, an inmate took the key off a correction officer's set of keys that were left hanging in a cell door.
The victim, identified only by initials LM in legal documents to protect her privacy, identified Jefferson as her assailant from a photo lineup on August 27, 2016. The impact on her was profound, as she expressed in a statement, "My life and the lives of my family have been in turmoil since the events of last week. We are struggling to move forward. I am praying those responsible will be held to a measure of justice. What makes this case particularly disturbing is the indication that LM was not the only victim that night. According to court records, on the same morning, another woman was heard screaming, and it was later learned that she too had been sexually assaulted by Jefferson and other men.
It was used to let now convicted murderer Dante Jefferson out of his cell. The woman who filed the lawsuit says on the same morning of her assault, she heard another woman screaming. She says she then learned that woman was also sexually assaulted by Jefferson and other men.
The second victim's account was equally harrowing, as she described in a 2016 interview.
I was asleep. When I woken up, he was having sex with me. I was trying to fight back.
In response to these assaults, Jefferson was charged with first-degree rape, first-degree burglary, and 2 counts of first-degree sexual abuse. He later pleaded guilty to burglary for knowingly entering the jail cell of the victim for the purpose of committing rape. In October 2017, Jefferson was sentenced to 4 life sentences, including life without parole, for a separate 2014 shooting that killed a 34-year-old man and paralyzed a 10-year-old boy. The institutional response to the assault was swift but arguably insufficient. Kansas City officials ordered the immediate removal of all female inmates from the facility, transferring them to Clay and Platte County jails until security improvements could be made. Female detainees were returned in October 2016 after assurances of enhanced security measures. Additionally, 1 jail guard was suspended without pay pending investigation, and the county hired former U.S. Attorney Todd Graves to conduct an independent probe. In January 2017, Jackson County settled a negligence claim with the victim for $275,000. As reported by the Kansas City Star. The settlement included a confidentiality clause, and the county did not admit wrongdoing, with the victim's name redacted in related documents. Baltimore Men's Jail. Chelsea Gilliam was arrested on December 17, 2021, on an assault charge and detained pre-trial in Baltimore's jail system until her release on May 13, 2022. Despite identifying as a woman since 2003 and legally changing her name to Chelsea in 2009, she was placed in an all-male dormitory at the Baltimore City Correctional Center. This placement directly contradicted established practices for housing transgender individuals based on their gender identity.
The lawsuit asserts negligence and intentional infliction of emotional distress because DPSCS denied Ms. Gilliam medical care, forced her to live with male inmates, and placed her in solitary confinement.
After approximately 3 months in this all-male housing unit, Gilliam experienced what she had feared. She was sexually assaulted at knife point by another prisoner. Despite reporting the assault, the jail took no action, leaving her unprotected and vulnerable to further harm.
While at the Baltimore jail, Gilliam says she was forced to shower with male inmates. During this time, she says she was sexually assaulted by another inmate. Her attorneys are asking for injunctive relief and requesting DCPS adopt policies, procedures, and training for its officers to prevent this from happening again.
Following the assault, Gilliam's situation deteriorated further when she was moved to solitary confinement or administrative segregation at the Maryland Reception, Diagnostic and Classification Center in February 2022. This move was allegedly due solely to her gender identity, with no disciplinary infractions on her record. In solitary confinement, she was allowed out of her cell for only 5 hours per week, and when permitted to leave, she was shackled by hands, waist, and ankles, including during showers, which added to her distress. On April 19, 2023, Gilliam filed a lawsuit in Baltimore Federal Court against the Maryland Department of Public Safety and Correctional Services, DPSCS, naming Secretary Carolyn Scruggs and wardens of the involved facilities as defendants. The lawsuit details additional mistreatment, including denial of hormone therapy, which she had been receiving since her diagnosis with gender dysphoria in 2003, leading to physical and mental health deterioration, including a high likelihood of depression and suicidality. She also faced consistent misgendering and harassment from both staff and inmates, with reports of being treated like an alien and subjected to ridicule.
I would say that I was treated like an animal, but it was worse than that. People love and respect their animals. I was treated like an alien from the moment that I entered Baltimore City Corrections by inmates and staff.
Gilliam's attorneys, led by Eve Hill of Brown, Goldstein, and Levy LLP, are seeking injunctive relief, compensatory and punitive damages, and changes to DPSC's policies, procedures, and training to prevent future incidents. At a press conference on April 19, 2023, Gilliam expressed her desire for accountability, stating, "I don't want what happened to me to happen to any other trans woman in the state of Maryland." The C experience has had lasting effects on Gilliam, who now reports anxiety in crowds of of more than 5 people. The denial of hormone therapy and the assault have worsened her gender dysphoria, with long-term consequences for her mental and physical well-being. Thank you for watching. Click on one of the cards on your screen to see more videos like this.